Sorry about that. The nation of Israel. Jerusalem is the capital of Judah, and Samaria is the capital of Israel at this time. All right, so the miracle of increased oil. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 1. The wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that he revered the Lord, but now his creditor is coming to take my 2 boys as his slaves." This was pretty commonplace for back then, right? If you owed a debt to somebody, people, the creditor or the person, hey Kenny, that you owed the debt to could take one of your family members or a couple of your family members to work off your debt. Okay, and so this woman comes to Elisha on. She's a wife, or now a widow, of one of the prophets from the company of prophets that he was with, and her husband died, and she's coming to him and saying that, look, my husband owed a debt, and now that he's dead, the creditor is coming to take my 2 boys as his slaves. This is pretty commonplace for back then. The Bible is very specific about, in the Mosaic Law, that this type of thing was okay. But it also said that if the debtor was an Israelite, or basically of the same nationality, that they were not to treat them as a common slave, but they had rights, okay, and that every 7 years that they were to be forgiven of their debts, because that was part of the Sabbath that they observed, right? The Sabbath is not just a time of 1 day a week of resting, but it's also a time of once every 7 years, people being forgiven of their debts. And so it was common for children or family members to be taken as slaves to work off debts of people that have died that can't repay their debts. And so Elisha replied to her, "How can I help you? Tell me what do you have in your house?" He's like, "Well, what do you have? Like, okay, if you owe a debt, is there anything that you have of any value, right, that you can maybe sell?" And he's just being logical here. She says, "Your servant has nothing there at all," she said, "except a little oil." And at this time, remember, oil here is also probably a lot more valuable than it is today. It was used for everything, not just cooking, but for fuel for your lamps and anointing, all different kinds of remedies. Matter of fact, we pay a little bit of money per month, and we get these care packages from Israel, from different local family-owned businesses, because of the war and everybody hating on Israel these days. It's really hurt their economy, obviously. And so one of the things that we partake in as a family to support the people of Israel, because the Bible, I still believe in the Bible where it says if you bless, that God will bless those who bless them, curse those who curse them, and we should always be praying for the people of Israel. They are still God's people, and I firmly believe that. And so if that's one way that I can support them, then I will. I don't necessarily have to get into all the politics or believe in everything that is going on with the politics, but as far as the people go, we should love them, we should care for them, we should pray for them, and we should support them however possible. And so that's one of the ways that we do it as a family. I'm not saying everybody should, but we give a little bit of money a month, and they send us boxes from different families, different areas of Israel, and it's got a letter, a letter, and some all different kinds of stuff from Israel, and it's really cool. But one of the things that we have sitting up there on my counter right now is a bottle of olive oil, legit olive oil from the olive trees there in Israel, which I think it's interesting that it's just sitting there. We're covering this this story right now. But anyways, that was a tangent. But again, if you do have an opportunity to support God's people, Israel, right? I believe we should do so. You don't have to necessarily get all involved in the politics and the war and everything else, right? But they are still God's chosen people, 100%. I believe that with my heart. And so we should love them, support them, and pray for them as such. And God will bless you for it, it says in Scripture. But we shouldn't do it just for the blessing. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. Anyways. And so she says, this widow says, all I've got is this little bit of oil. He's like, okay, that's something I can work with. Okay. And again, oil back then is probably a lot more useful, probably costs more than it does now. They didn't have the means to process things like we do now back then, right? So it took a lot more effort, but that's what she has. It says, accept a little oil. Elisha said, go around, ask all your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. Then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into the jars, as each is filled, put it to one side. She has a little bit of oil. And so what Elisha says is go around and ask for a bunch, not just a few, a bunch of jars, empty jars from your neighbors. And then I want you to go into your house, go into a room with your oil and all these jars and close the door. And I think it's interesting that he says to close the door. There's something that, and we see that with a lot of the things that Jesus does with his miracles, is it's behind closed doors. It's very private. It's very personal. And God doesn't need to make a big show out of everything that he does, because he's God, okay? And he doesn't need the publicity. Certainly he doesn't need any help from us. He is God. If he wanted to put himself out there to make him known through great miracles, he can do that. He doesn't need us to do that. And so I just think it's interesting that they have, or he says to go behind closed doors and do this in quiet. Okay, and it makes it more, I think it makes it more like a personal thing for this woman with her faith in God. Okay, instead of like making this big public show in front of people of what God's going to do. And sometimes a lot of times I think it means more when God does things individually just for us in our lives. I know part of our testimonies, each one of our individual testimonies, a lot of that our testimony is what God has done specifically for us in our time of need, right? Instead of what God has done collectively as like a group of people. And he does do those things too. But I think for myself, some of the things that stand out the most as far as what God has done for me in my life is he is just something that nobody else knows about, or something that I've been praying about, maybe, quietly, and just asking God for, and he's answered prayer for me in that particular matter. And it's not something that it's public. It's just something private. It's something more intimate that God has blessed me with in my life. And I think this is one of those situations for this widow. And it seems like it has more of an impact, okay? I mean, mentally and spiritually in somebody's life, when God just does things just in the quiet of our home, maybe in the peace and quiet behind closed doors in our home, where God just comes through in a mighty way. And so that's what he tells her to do here. Go close the doors and start pouring oil into the jars. Well, she only has a little bit of oil, and so he's already saying that you're going to be pouring, all these jars are going to be filled, basically. So they're going to do all this, and you're just going to keep on pouring until they're all full. When all the jars were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another one." He replied, "There's not a jar left." Then the oil stopped flowing. She went and told the man of God, and he said, "Go sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what is left." And so there's obviously enough oil to provide, not just to pay off her debts, but it's again, we see how God works, and he doesn't just do the bare minimum, right? God always, he always goes above and beyond when he does things for us. He is the great and mighty God, and so when he does things, it's in a great and mighty way. And so he says, "Go sell the oil, pay off your debts, plus what you have left." And so there was plenty left for them to live on. Okay, he's not just going to say, "All right, your debts are paid. As far as the rest of it, you're going to have to figure that out." Right? No, God sees it through so that she will be blessed and won't be left with the burden of having to figure out how she's going to continue to feed and support her children, because that's the God that we serve. And so 2 Kings chapter 4 verse 8, one day Elisha went to Shunem, and a well-to-do woman was there who urged him to stay for a meal. So whenever he came, he stopped there to eat. She said to her husband, "I know that this man who often comes our way is a holy man of God. Let's make a small room on the roof and put in it a bed and a table, a chair and a lamp for him. Then he could stay there whenever he comes to us." One day when Elisha came, he went up to his room and lay down there. He said to his servant Gehazi, "Call the Shunammite." So he called her, and she stood before him. Elisha said to him, "Tell her, you have gone to all this trouble for us. Now, what can be done for you? Can we speak on behalf to the king or to the commander of the army?" So this Shunammite woman and man, okay, so it's a woman and man, they make this place. And so Elisha is a traveling prophet, right? That's what he does. And Gehazi is basically like his servant that he travels with him everywhere he goes. Bless you. And so this Shunammite woman knows that he is constantly traveling right by where they live. Okay, and so she offers him, meals every time that they stop or every time that they pass by there, and he comes by there so often to eat and to just kind of rest that this husband and wife, they build basically they add an attachment onto their house for Elisha the prophet to stay in when he's there. And so that's hospitality to, that's the epitome of hospitality, right? You can't get any more hospitable than that. And so they build this addition on, and it says onto their roof. During this time, the roofs would have been like the hangout place of their houses at the time. It would have been like the porch, right? They can go on the roof and hang out, watch the sunrise, watch the sunset. It's not Phoenix hot there most of the time, and so if it's nice outside, they can go up there and relax. Well, they built this little addition to the house for Elisha the prophet, and he recognizes that as a blessing and them being super hospitable. And so he says, "What can I do for you since you guys have gone through all this trouble for us?" He says, "I can speak on your behalf to the king or the commander of the army." And she replied, "I have a home among my own people," meaning that I'm taken care of. I don't have any needs when it comes to like that kind of stuff, right? We don't have any concerns. My home is here. My people are here. My family is here. They all take care of us, and we take care of them. So I have a home among my people. What can be done for her? Elisha asked. Gehazi said, "Well, she has no son, and her husband is old." And so it's just her and her husband. Her husband's clearly older than she is, but they've got no son. And back then, that was like one of the greatest things, is having a son, having somebody to carry on your bloodline, right? That was like one of the biggest blessings back then, and still is, to have a son, right? So his servant says, well, they've got no son. And then Elisha said, call her. So he called her. She stood in the doorway. About this time next year, Elisha said, you will hold a son in your arms. And he prophesies. That's what he does. He's a prophet. He prophesies over her, and says, look, since there's nothing I can do for you, he says, I'm going to prophesy this over you, and you're going to have a son in your arms this time next year. And this is almost, it's like one of those Abraham and Sarah type things, right? Like they're old, especially if her husband, it says, is old. And so it's the probability of this happening is, doubtful. And so, and there's no doubt that they've been trying to have children, or trying to have a son. And so she says, no, my lord, she objected. Don't mislead your servant, O man of God. But the woman became pregnant. And the next year, about that same time, she gave birth to a son, just as Elisha had told her. And so it comes to pass that she has a son, just as Elisha prophesied over her. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 38, Elisha returned to Gilgal, and there was a famine in that region. While the company of the prophets was meeting with him, he said to his servant, put on a large pot and cook some stew for these men. One of them went out to the fields to gather herbs and found a wild vine. He gathered some of its gourds and filled the fold of his cloak. When he returned, he cut them up into the pot of stew, though no one knew what they were. The stew was poured out for the men, but as they began to eat it, they cried out, O man of God, there is death in the pot, and they could not eat it. Elisha said, get some flour. He put it into the pot and said, serve it to the people to eat, and there was nothing harmful in the pot. And so Elisha's out during this famine in the region, where there's a big company of prophets, there's a big gathering, there's a big fellowship of prophets gathered together and ministering to each other. And he tells one of them goes out to the field to gather some herbs and some veggies and stuff to put into this stew. Obviously not aware of what he was gathering. He probably was no cook or chef. It was probably just somebody trying to grab some stuff that they thought might look good or taste good or whatever if you threw it into the stew. Well, one of the things that he gathered was a poisonous vine. And so they began to pour it out, and they began to eat it and get sick. And they says, oh man of God, there's a death in the pot. And so people were getting sick immediately from it. And Elisha says, go get some flour. He put it into the pot, serve it to the people to eat, and there was nothing harmful in the pot. Was it the flour that made the poison go away? No, it was a miracle from God. By this prophet Elisha, he just used the flour as basically a catalyst for this miracle. But flour is not the antidote for poison, in case you guys were wondering. Antidote, sorry. But in this case, this is what Elisha put into the pot, and the people were able to eat it. They didn't get sick. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 42 through 44, a man came from Baal Shalishah, bringing the man of God 20 loaves of barley bread baked from the first ripe grain, along with some heads of new grain. Give it to the people to eat, Elisha said. How can I set it before 100 men? His servant asked. But Elisha answered, give it to the people to eat, for this is what the Lord says, they will eat and have some left over. Then he set it before them. They ate and had some left over, according to the word of the Lord. There's 100 fed with just a few loaves of bread, right? So this is kind of like a precursor to what Jesus is going to do with the feeding of the 5,000 and feeding of the 4,000 in the New Testament. But a miracle still, right? In 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 18, back to the Shunammite woman, her son, okay, remember her son, who was a miracle that she even gave birth to a son, because her husband was old, and Elisha prophesied, said that your son will be here this time next year. You're going to be holding a son in your arms, and it happens. Well, it moves forward here a couple years. The son's obviously old enough to walk around or run around. It says the child grew, and one day he went out to his father, who was with his reapers. My head, he said to his father. His father told a servant, carry him to his mother. After the servant had lifted him up and carried him to his mother, the boy sat on her lap until noon, and then he died. She went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, then shut the door and went out. And so years have passed from the time the boy is born. Obviously, he's old enough to run, walk, talk, right? Say, my head hurts. He goes out to his dad's working out in the field, and the boy goes out to his dad, and he's like, my head hurts. And the dad, not concerned at all, right? Probably doesn't really understand the severity of it. Says, just go see your mom. She'll give you a kiss on your head. It'll all be better. And so the boy goes into his mom, or he tells the servants to go, carry him off to his mom. She'll take care of him, and they do so. And the boy sits on mom's lap for a few hours, and after a few hours, the boy dies. And so she doesn't tell the husband. Instead, she just goes up to Elisha's room, right, where they had built him the addition onto the house. And she went up, laid him on Elisha's bed, and shuts the door and walks out. And then she calls to her husband and says, please send me one of the servants and a donkey so that I can go to the man of God quickly and return. And so she still doesn't tell the husband that the boy has died. And so the husband responds, why go to him today, he asks. It's not the new moon or the Sabbath. And so he doesn't understand, right, what's happened. He doesn't understand the seriousness of it. But she's not going to allow anything to come in between her getting to the prophet, because she knows, obviously, if there's anybody that can help, it's that prophet. It's God, right? And that's the heart, that's the attitude that we need to have in every situation that we come to in life that is this serious, right? If there's anybody that can help with something serious, it's definitely 100% God and only God. And so we should immediately be praying to him and seeking him in those situations. And that's kind of her attitude, right? She doesn't even tell her husband what happened, because then she'd have to, get into the whole, well, maybe he's not dead, or he might second guess her, or he might want to come with her, and then he'd have to come back and maybe change clothes or get ready himself. She just completely says, I just need to go see the prophet Elisha. And so he's like, he responds, why? What's the big deal? And she says, it's all right, she said. She saddled the donkey, said to her servant, lead on, don't slow down for me unless I tell you. So she set out and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. When he saw her in the distance, the man of God said to his servant Gehazi, look, there's the Shunammite. Run to meet her and ask her, are you all right? Is your husband all right? Is your child all right? Everything is all right, she said. That's her response to him. Everything's all right. When she reached the man of God at the mountain, she took hold of his feet. Gehazi came over to push her away, but the man of God said, leave her alone. She is in bitter distress. But the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me why. Okay, so she comes desperately seeking Elisha, runs to go see him, and Gehazi, Elisha sees her in the distance, sends Gehazi, her servant, and he says, run to meet her and ask her if she's okay. And she says, are you all right? Is everything all right? And she says, everything's all right. Well, it's not, right? Her son is dead. But in her mind, maybe she's saying, now everything is all right because I've come to the one who can do anything about it, right? And so she knows, and she just has that faith in God and in this prophet of God that now everything is going to be all right because she's made it to him. That's how we should be, again, when we come to God. We should know and have faith that regardless of the situation, regardless even of the outcome, everything is going to be all right because we have faith, we can trust in God, and that whatever the outcome is, even if it's not what we expect or what we want 100%, we can have faith and trust that whatever it is, he's going to be glorified in and through it. And so again, because it happens, right? People die, people pass away, loved ones die, and we don't understand why necessarily. Sometimes, a lot of times, like if your child dies, and it's sad. It's definitely a sad situation, but we need to understand, and we have to understand as believers that whatever the case is, that God has a plan, and God has a purpose, and that He will be glorified. Maybe not in our understanding, maybe not in how we think it should go, or why we think it should go, or when necessarily, but definitely in His timing and in His perfect will. That's what we are to trust in. Okay, and so that's where this woman's at. She's like, well, I don't know for sure if she doesn't know for sure that this prophet's going to raise him from the dead. I'm sure she's heard of the stories of the prophet Elijah raising the boy from the dead. And maybe she's thinking in her heart, maybe she's thinking, if he can do it, this man of God can definitely do it. I don't know. But she says everything is all right. And so in her heart, she believes that everything is all right. But she's still in distress, okay? And so we can have faith in God, we can trust in God, and still have emotions, okay? And still have feelings. It's okay. But just like this woman here, she says everything is all right, okay? Because God is in control, and that's the truth. But there are issues, okay? So everything is all right because God is in control in our lives, even though there are things going on that we don't necessarily, that we're struggling with, okay? We might be going through different seasons in life where we're struggling, but ultimately, God is in control, and everything is all right because He is God, and He is on the throne, and He is in control of all things. So, she says, did I ask you for a son, my Lord? She says, didn't I tell you, don't raise my hopes? Elisha said to Gehazi, tuck your cloak into your belt, take my staff in your hand, and run. If you meet anyone, do not greet him, and if anyone greets you, do not answer. Lay my staff on the boy's face. But the child's mother said, as surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you. So he got up and followed her. Gehazi went on ahead and laid the staff on the boy's face, but there was no sound or response. So Gehazi went back to meet Elisha and told him the boy has not awakened. When Elisha reached the house, there was the boy lying dead on his couch. He went in, shut the door on the two of them, and prayed to the Lord. Then he got on the bed and lay upon the boy, mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands. This is like the oldest known mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, I think, that was documented. I say that jokingly, but this is kind of what it sounds like. Eyes to eyes, hands to hands, mouth to mouth. As he stretched himself out on the boy's body grew warm. Elisha turned away and walked back and forth in the room, and then got on the bed, stretched out upon him once more. The boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Elisha summoned Gehazi and said, call the Shunammite. And he did. When she came, he said, take your son. She came in, fell at his feet, and bowed to the ground. She took her son and went out. Now Elisha had said to the woman, 2 Kings chapter 8, so we're going from chapter 4 to chapter 8. Elisha said to the woman whose son he had restored to life, go away with your family and stay for a while wherever you can, because the Lord had decreed a famine in the land that would last 7 years. The woman proceeded to go, as the man of God said. She and her family went away and stayed in the land of the Philistines 7 years. 2 Kings chapter 6. The company of the prophets said to Elisha, "Look, the place where we meet with you is too small for us. Let us go to the Jordan, where each of us can get a pole, and let us build a place there for us to live." And he said, "Go." Then one of them said, "Won't you please come with your servants?" "I will," Elisha replied. And he went with them. They went to the Jordan and began to cut down trees. As one of them was cutting down a tree, the iron axe head fell into the water. "Oh, my Lord," he cried out, "it was borrowed." The man of God asked, "Where did it fall?" When he showed him the place, Elisha cut a stick and threw it there, and he made the iron float. "Lift it out," he said. Then the man reached out his hand and took it. And just another miracle, right? It's just not a magic trick, but a miracle. There was an iron axe head fell into the water. Iron doesn't float in water, in case you guys were wondering. But this just shows that Elijah did miracles great and small. And he did miracles that were relevant and that were the people needed, right? That like this man who he borrowed that axe from somebody, and so Elisha, I'm trying to think of the word here. It was something that this man was really concerned with, and so Elisha didn't have to do that. He could have just got him another axe head or whatever the case is, but he just does this miracle because it's his heart for to help people, right? And so he's not just an angry man of God who calls down bears to eat children. He has a heart for the people that he's ministering to and with. And so that's the end of the study for today. And tomorrow we're going to get into miracles and massacres. And it looks like it's going to be a pretty short one. As long as I can keep my commentary to a minimum, it should be a pretty short one. So that's all we got from Elisha today. But a good study of what faith looks like in times of distress, in times where, if you think about that Shunammite woman with her son, and for her to say, when she's asked, is everything okay? She says, everything's fine, everything's okay. Well, we know it wasn't, right? Her son was dead, sitting on Elisha's bed, and her response is, everything's okay. And that should be our response, because everything is okay. God is on his throne, right? Everything is okay because God is in control, regardless of the situations that we're in, regardless of the circumstances that we find ourselves in. Everything is okay, ultimately, okay? And so that's the kind of faith that we should have. So that's all I've got for today. I have no idea where we're at as far as time, because my wife's phone kicked off and had to restart it. So let me go ahead and pray, and we'll wrap it up. So Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for your word. I thank you for this study of your prophet Elisha, Father. I pray that you just help us to be bold. Help us to grow in our faith, Father. Strengthen our faith and our trust in you in every situation, not just in the great situations, in the big moments in life, Father, but in the little moments that lead up to those big moments. Father, I pray you just help us to always just trust in you and follow you, and to look for your guidance in our lives, Father, in every moment, in every detail. Lord, I ask that you just bless those that are studying with us, encourage them, lift them up, Father, grow them also in their faith and in their walk with you. Lord, I ask that you just bless us the rest of tonight. Help us stay focused on you throughout this week, Father, and to live for you. We love you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Alrighty, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.